There we go.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time and your attention today for the Talking with Heroes podcast. Justin Henderson, the host. Michael Komorous is our guest. He is a Army veteran, but he kind of jumped around a couple different, didn't you? You had National Guard, he had a little bit, so I won't give too much away. But really what I'm excited about is just to have the audience hear about your journey. I mean, what a great high school from a pitching prodigy to military experience, right? To what you're doing at George Mason right now. So if you could you just introduce yourself to the audience, kind of really where you are right now and what you're doing, and then we'll go through your path.
Absolutely, Justin. I'm so honored to be here with you. I think we had a chat about a year ago on my podcast and chatting about all the great things that you're doing for our community out there. I'm actually an Air Force guy, not an Army guy, but I retired after 24 years of service. And then once I retired, I joined the team at George Mason University, working in the College of Engineering and Computing. If you would ask me 24 years ago what I'd be doing today, this definitely would not be it. But I'm happy to share that story and that journey with you today.
Well, yeah. So, Air Force, my apologies. But then your last job, you were at the Pentagon. Were you working with the Army?
I was in a joint services job. So I worked with everybody, predominantly the Army and the Navy. Okay. And we started to do more Space Force related items before I retired. But you work with everybody. Our cubicles had all the services in there.
Oh, how fun. And so first, we all have we usually have some stories, right? What made you join, right? What was that dynamic moment that made you join the military? So, I'm cheated. You already told me kind of how it went, but I would love for the audience to hear of those challenges you went through high school, through sports, injuries, and then what drove you to serve.
I absolutely had no interest in military service whatsoever. Actually, when I was in college as a freshman, we had some ROTC cadets that were there at the university, and I used to make fun of them because they had to get up early on Saturday mornings and go do their PT. And I never, ever thought I would be joining the service. I was a baseball player through and through. I wanted to be a firefighter medic when I finished college. That was my main goal. And as I progressed through college and started working on the firefighting mission, I was a volunteer at the local fire department. And I was also a medic at the local trauma center in Tacoma, Washington. While I was a medic at the trauma center, I started to work with all these wonderful doctors and got to know them personally, and come to find out multiple of them were former military before, switching over to the civilian side. One was a Harrier pilot in the Marine Corps, and then he went to medical school. Another one was a helicopter pilot in the Army, and then went to medical school and became a flight doc in the Army. And the other one was a Air Force flight doc and worked for the Surgeon General. So as I'm working with these guys, I said, Mike, have you ever considered the military? I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. Once again, I was remembering as a freshman in college, these people getting up early and doing PT. It's like, I don't want to do that. I enjoy exercise and working out, but on my time, not on somebody else yelling at me. They said, no, we think you should join the Air Force. And I said, the Air Force, tell me more. Oh, it's the big boy program. You don't have to do this PT and all this stuff like the Army. So they're the ones that talked me into it. I had no inkling or interest in the military whatsoever until I was until I was a trauma medic there at St. Joe's ER in Tacoma, Washington. Those are the guys that talked me into it.
Well, they saw something in you, obviously.
They did. I had the high and tight, short haircut. I was very driven. I was one of the few guys that showed up to officer training school, and they didn't actually have to cut my hair. So it was one of those things where it was a great fit for me. A lot of times when you show up at these basic training type scenarios, people are getting their hair cut. They're cutting a tremendous amount of weight because they're so out of shape. Luckily for me, I was in really good shape. So for me, that piece wasn't what was difficult. What was difficult was getting used to people yelling at you and the sleep deprivation, as you probably remember from your basic training days.
Yeah. I laughed when you said, I don't want to get up that early. And as a Marine, right, you're like, well, join the Air Force, great. So you found,
Yeah,
but I think you found the right service for you, and that I don't think people realize civilians when they think about service. Hollywood doesn't do us any favors, right?
no.
We're not all door kickers, Navy SEALs, jumping out of helicopters, all that. And there is a community for everybody in the military, I really think.
Absolutely. Of the services, as I became a senior military officer, you start to realize that each service has a culture and a typical fit. And I feel
Mhm.
like the Army is really good at getting our young officers into leadership roles right away. And so by the time they become senior military leaders, they've led thousands of men and women throughout their career. Similarly, in the Marine Corps, I feel like the Marine Corps is very well read, well spoken, and
Mhm.
they have a wide breadth of experience before they get to that senior military officer level. The Air Force, I think that's where we fall short. In the Air Force, the officer is typically the weapon system expert, the person that's flying the airplane, flying the helicopter, and they stay in that role for a long time. So until they
Mhm.
become a senior captain, young major, say let's say that 10-year mark, a lot of these folks don't have those leadership experiences that their brothers and sisters from the other services have. So the Air Force, I feel, is much more of a technical skill set,
Yep.
and that officer typically is the one still doing the mission, whereas in the other services, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, and that's and that's also introvert extrovert. There's some roles that are just built for the intro. Everybody thinks if you're in the military, you have to be an extrovert. You don't.
One thing that I love about the military is that they get you out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
I was an introvert. I much prefer reading books, that quiet environment, and they get you out of your comfort zone. They said, "Okay, Mike, we know that you're good at studying and taking tests and grades. We need to get you outside of your comfort zone. Let's get you out there providing speeches in front of other members of your team, get you in roles and responsibilities that require you to care for other folks besides yourself." And so that's where that transition takes place. There's so many jobs out there that, for instance, when I was a medic at the trauma center, that was your job. That's all you did. There was no
Mhm.
opportunities for leadership. There was no growth potential without going to medical school or getting your nursing degree. You were there and that's what you did. Whereas in the military, it's like, okay, we trained you to do this. Now what's next? What's next?
Mhm.
What's next? So there's this continuous level of education, training, the old mantra, see one, do one, teach one. The military is all about that. And that's what I loved. I never, once again, thought 24, 25 years later,
Yeah.
I would be working around, 12,000 engineering students at George Mason University. I just never would have guessed that in my life.
You mentioned the the growth through the military. Uh being in there for 26 years. Did you find that momentum, like leaving the military? Did you find like you missed that momentum a little bit? Like I find people that are in those officer roles that grow quickly, 16, 24, so they get out and there's like, where's that force? Where's that pressure almost?
I see a lot of that. I was fortunate enough to I I say that I had 100 cups of coffee with 100 different folks to figure out what the heck I was going to do after I came
That's
out
when
of the
I met you.
military. So I had so many interactions with folks that did I still fall into some of those typical uh, pitfalls? Absolutely. But I was also aware of many of them as I prepared for that exit strategy. So during all those interviews and informal interviews and
Mm.
coffees and conversations, I tried to figure out which areas out there were a good culture fit for me rather than
Mhm.
just jumping at the first job. So many folks out there, they even though they have well-paying jobs, they still have a mortgage, they still, kids are getting ready to go to school, so they have a lot of bills. So they have this pressure of I've got to get the first job out there and take it and go with it. Me, on the other hand, I planned about 10 years in advance and said, okay, I need to pay off my house. I need to make sure I've paid off my car. I make sure that I've prepared myself for that exit when I don't have to say yes to the first opportunity. So it allowed me to truly have those 100 cups of coffee to figure out where I was going to fit in.
You know, you brought something up at the beginning of that I don't think people realize enough. This is the one time you get to decide what your life looks like. What does a typical day week look like? People don't think about that. Like, hey, do I want to be 5 a.m. till 4 p.m? Do I want to be 2 p.m. till 10 at night? Do I want to, they just got to go, hey, what was my experience? What does that correlate to? And let me go get it. And they forget that me part.
I agree, Justin. Being a pilot in the Air Force and flying C-17s missions all over the world, everyone just assumed, well, you'll go to the airlines. It's a well-paying job. There's tons of opportunities and openings out there. That's just the natural transition for an Air Force pilot when they retire. That just wasn't for me. So all those time zone changes and all those times of being away from your family, I said, hey, I would rather do something where I see my family more often. I maintain that routine of getting up and going to bed around the same time and being here for my kids and my wife. So I elected not to go down that military route. Sure. Could I have made more money? Absolutely. But that is not everything, right? It's happiness comes from so many different elements of our lives. And what I have found is that during my time in command, I was at my happiest moments when I was around others, leading, mentoring. That dynamic is what I really enjoyed. I love seeing my troops get married, have a family, put a down payment on their first house. Those types of things gave me internal satisfaction far more than a paycheck.
Yeah, and that's you need so much money for a standard of living. But yeah, don't I say it all the time. Don't chase it too much. The Midas touch is real, and going from a career path where it's purely, internal growth, growing, investing in humans, to then jumping into something that a lot of your leadership decisions are financial based. And hey, how does that impact? So yeah, I think we've talked about that. It's just good if you're watching and you're in that transition. It's a moment to really reflect.
It is. And here's a perfect example at George Mason. We just hired an intern. He's a 14-year Afghani immigrant to the United States, and he is an IT specialist. They weren't exactly sure what to do with him during his internship. And I said, please, I will take him under my wing, and I will do my best to grow and develop and figure out what this guy's skill sets are to see if there's a follow-on opportunity for him, because he really wanted full-time employment. So I brought him underneath my wing, and we just had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations, shared experiences of Afghanistan, and came to the realization this kid he's hungry and he wants to work. And so when I started talking to the team, I said, look, it is so difficult these days to find somebody that has work ethic and is curious. He's always asking questions, always looking to learn more. He was texting me 11 o'clock at night saying, Mr. Mike, I just finished the assignment you gave me. I'm like, Shams, please do not do these assignments till 11 o'clock at night. We'll go through this together. But when I started getting those text messages from him, I realized this is somebody that is ready to make a difference. And so it's worth my time to invest that extra effort into him to see him succeed. Once again, I get far more satisfaction seeing him succeed than, me getting a promotion.
Well, you talk about something too, why, veterans, if you're out there on the market, like what service to your country makes you a high performing human. Unfortunately, the human isn't in the hiring process until, right, the applicant and all that. And it takes a while, but I can tell you from 20 years of helping veterans transition, hiring leaders are looking for us because of that. We're disciplined, we're hardworking, we're curious, green and growing.
Yeah, our conversation about a year ago, you really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of our language does not translate over to the civilian sector. So you have to try to figure out what your skill sets are. And I thought that's what you were so great at, is developing these apps and these AI type training things. So these folks understood that me turning this wrench or doing this process in the Army or the other services translates a little bit differently, but it's still the same skill set. But one of the things that our military brothers and sisters have that a lot of the general population doesn't is we have that drive to get up in the morning and make the difference. So I would rather invest in somebody that I know is going to be there every day at 6 a.m. or whenever you start. I will gladly train that person than hire the highly skilled individual who is, flaky around the edges and you're not sure if they're going to be a dependable employee.
Yeah. That old baseball analogy, you have two baseball players. They both run to first base, exact same speed. One has perfect form, one has horrible form. Who do you invest in? Right, the one with horrible form.
Sure, yeah, because I can get that guy running faster once he learns the technique.
Yeah, and so much out in corporate America now. I can tell you from hiring leaders that feel like the job description's broke, the applicant tracking system's broke, applications are going everywhere, rejections are going everywhere, and all they want is a good human to invest in. That's it. All I want. Give me a good human to invest in.
It's just cracking the code to get in there to have the conversation. So you mentioned, we talked about baseball earlier. Mm-hmm. I was a good student. I wasn't a great student. And baseball was the way that I got to college. Baseball is the way that that catapulted my career. When I joined the Air Force, they had competitive softball teams. So I played competitive softball. I got to know all these senior leaders out on the softball field, not in the office. It was through athletics that made that difference. So many of us have these skill sets that we don't think are valuable in the workplace, but you never know what it is. You could be good at video games and come to find out that there's a lot of people in your career that enjoy video games. You never know what these side hustles, these side skills that you have, how they translate into opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this Veteran Hiring Solutions was born out of my daughter asking for a cell phone. And then once I realized what happens to your brain on the internet, everything else, kind of the video job description, everything else came out of it. And, we're 10% of the U.S. economy, populace, veterans. We're 5.5% of U.S. workforce. So we're small but mighty. And like you said, if we stick together, right, it takes a village, I think we could really accomplish a lot. So I know I keep going back to the job seeker thing because that's my passion, but I want to get back into your transition. So you worked for the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense, right?
Secretary of Defense, yes. So I started off in policy. So for instance, the current administration just released the National Defense Strategy. That office that I worked in, we would write that strategy. Wasn't really my main interest. I mean, sure, do I like to write and get into the weeds about how we're going to shape policy? That's interesting. But my next job was in legislative affairs. And so that allowed me to go work on Capitol Hill and understand how the money is actually allocated to the services, how the professional staff members that work for the senators and work for the representatives, how they are actually making the sausage behind the scenes, and come to realize there's so many young staffers over there that work for these elected politicians. They're just like young airmen, soldiers, and sailors in the military. They have these aspirations to go to law school and to get into policy and all these other opportunities. So by you showing that you care about them, you're getting to know them, you're helping them, pursue their dreams, that it becomes this relationship, just like being a senior leader in the military. And that's what I enjoyed so much, is that you could have these coffees with a 21-year-old staffer and come to realize that he or she is the one that's going to be making the recommendation to that representative or to that senator. So investing your time in those folks is how you truly get policy done on Capitol Hill. I love
like the E4 mafia, right?
It's like, it is. It completely is. And I'm so tired of, you mentioned the cell phone thing. I'm so tired of all the anger towards one another, whether you're left or whether you're right, that I do a lot of writing online of trying to bring people to the middle. And my goodness, you would think I, killed their dog. I mean, they just get so angry. And I'm like, guys, Capitol Hill isn't a bunch of money hungry, corrupt, crazy people. Are there a few out there that are like that? Absolutely. But I'm telling you, 95%, if not 99% of these folks are wonderful people that have nothing but great intentions for the country on the right and the left.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so first, the mere exposure effect, MERE. If you're watching, mere exposure effect, look it up. It's how our brains don't know the difference between real life and video. That's what's priming our subconscious. And so that's why a lot of that anger happens. But yeah, I took my kids to the Pentagon, the White House, and the Capitol building this summer just to show.
I'm sorry I wasn't here for that. I remember.
I'm sorry I missed you too. But yeah, but you know, it was for that exact reason. It's like, I know, you know, Papa and grandparents are talking political, but here, meet the people that are actually in there making the sausage. They're all passion driven. They care, you know, and so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, there's a lot of things right now that the administration does that I'm not a fan of and that I'm against. But I also have friends that actually work in the administration, in the White House. My friend is one of the chiefs of staff for Pete Hegseth. So I have friends that work in these jobs, and we will still salute smartly, carry on, and do the work, whether you disagree or agree with somebody. I just don't know why we become so tribal and think, oh, well, because you voted for this person, you're my enemy. Like, no, that's not actually how this works.
You know, the
last time I checked, the majority of us. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, you know, the military taught me. You know, I came from a village of 300 people, tiny little redneck, and then all of a sudden you're with people from New York City, LA, Alabama, and it's just that melting pot. And through sweating together, failing and winning together, you realize you're all human. You know, and all those little differences, those nuances are what make the team so beautiful. You know,
exactly.
And I mean, that's why, you know, my passion too is that video job description model I have is because it gives hiring leaders the opportunity to speak about leadership roles and how to solve problems. And so that gives military leaders to tell that leader, hey, this is how I'd solve the problem. So we're trying to fill leadership roles with ethical leaders. You know, so that they can have those conversations with their team and say, no, this is how you operate. This is how you work together. And so that's always been my passion. And so now you get out of the Air Force. Because of the legislative affairs.
Yeah, no problem.
After the Air Force, how did you get to George Mason?
So I actually applied for a government affairs position for NAGAS, National Guards Association. Is basically a lobbying firm that is sharing the Guard history, the Guard message on Capitol Hill. I asked for some references for some folks that I worked for in the past, and unfortunately, I didn't get the job. But it turned out to be the way it is. It turned out well in the end. So one of those references was a retired 3-star general, and he is the F-16 pilot on 9/11 that was asked to shoot down Flight 93 over Pennsylvania if it turned back towards the major metropolitan areas. So his name is General Mark Sasseville, and he was one of my references. So when I called him and said, sir, you know, I didn't get the job. Thank you so much for at least having your name down on there as a reference. And he said, well, Mike, I'm glad you didn't get that job because I would love for you to come work with me at George Mason University. And he started explaining to me what they were doing with the College of Engineering and Computing. And it's just one door closed, another opened, right? And so that's what that military does for you. It gives you so many opportunities to continue to challenge yourself and get out of your comfort zone. I didn't speak engineer. I'm a biology major in college, but now I'm around all these PhD students and our chief science officer who came from DARPA. DARPA is like our major classified research program for the military. The guy, once again, put me under his wing, and I started to learn all the acronyms and all the things that translate over in the engineering world. And so got out of my comfort zone into a new challenge, and I'm absolutely fascinated with what these young kids are doing right now in our innovation lab.
Yeah, I mean, you told me about some of the projects you're working on, and they're absolutely fascinating. And, you know, again, 20 years, I've heard it. I smiled when you said you didn't get the first job, because I've seen so many veterans go, oh man, that was my job. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I promise you.
Yeah.
Your job's coming down the road.
My wife and I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. We live by the mantra of we just treat everybody equally. We're kind to everyone because you honestly never know. Being a guard guy, I was flying a mission in Las Vegas, and this gentleman was in his camouflage uniform, and we started chatting, and he was many ranks below me, and we're just having a conversation. He was a senior vice president at Boeing, so he's a multimillionaire, but he still wears the uniform on the weekends as a guardsman to once again give back to the community and mentor young airmen. So you never know who you're going to meet. So live by the mantra of treat everybody equally and be kind to everyone, because you never know what door might open for you.
Yeah. You know, the Hendersons say that life doesn't come at you, it comes through you. You know, you kind of create it. And something else you said, one door closed, another one opened. A lot of people know the second half of that saying. One door closes, another one opens, but most people spend too much time staring at the closed door.
Sure.
You know, and
yeah,
it's like
you that coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's a hard thing to let go of.
Yeah. And you know, with knowing that we're speaking to veterans, anybody from that 23-year-old just getting out to that 65-year-old that's just reviewing some core memories. Mm-hmm. Anything that you want to provide to the younger generation that's transitioning out, and any advice that you think that would help them?
Well, when I first came into the Air Force, I was 25 years old. So I was an older, more mature, more seasoned person coming in. I had once again had no idea what I was in store for and where I was going. But I had so many mentors. I had shared my personal story with so many people that they were the ones that found that path for me. So my recommendation for those folks that are getting ready to transition, don't keep it to yourself. Be out there telling your story, what drives you. Once again, being a pilot, my time on Capitol Hill, it completely changed my mind about what I found fulfilling in that follow-on career. And with that follow-on career, I realized I really enjoy how that sausage is made. I really enjoy how we take this money, these tax-paying dollars on Capitol Hill, and how we actually apply those to make our mission happen and to make the government run. It's not for everybody. I've shared that story with multiple people. Oh man, I can't think of anything more boring. Hey, it's not for everybody. But if you don't share your story and your interests with your peers and those around you, those mentors, then you're swimming upstream. You're just dropping resumes on LinkedIn, hoping for the best. There's so many people out there that want to help you. You just have to ask for help.
Yeah. It's almost like the unvocalized expectations are future disappointments. If you're not telling people what you want to be, who you want to be, where you want to go, how can you expect anybody to help you?
An example I have for you is General Norman Schwartz. He was the chief of staff of the Air Force in the early 2000s. So he's a retired 4-star general, very, very highly respected person here in the Washington, D.C. area. I had a chance to meet him informally at a dinner, and I said, "Sir, I can't let you leave my sight without thanking you for your service. And if you ever have time to have a conversation, I would love to chat with you as I prepare for retirement." He accepted that offer, gave me his executive assistant's phone number, and lo and behold, a week or two later, we're having a 30-minute Teams meeting about what that future path is. And he said at the end of that conversation, he said, "Mike, don't ever be afraid to go to senior leaders or senior mentors, people that you think are too high above you to have those conversations." He says, "You'd be surprised how many of us love giving back and want to help. So do not be afraid to ask people outside of your sphere of influence." So if you're getting ready to transition, don't be afraid to knock on that door of somebody that you thought was just too high above your rank, or start talking to your chaplain. That's all of our services have chaplains. They have connections to people throughout the service that you might never have had that opportunity. And so people that speak with a chaplain on a regular basis, they are typically have a good network and relationship.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't think about that advice. I'm going to make sure I do that when I talk to veterans that are gals that are still in about that. The chaplain's really a good point.
Yeah. All ranks, all
Yeah.
stripes, you name it. They all,
Mhm.
not all, but people don't care about your rank or stature when you're talking to the chaplain.
Mm-hmm. So. And going back about those senior people, I know you're only a year out, but the further you get away from service, the more you miss it, the more you want to be a part of it, right? The more you want to connect with those in it. So when you're transitioning out, and like I was an E4, everybody I interviewed with had brass on their shoulders. I was like, nobody wants to talk, but the more and more you start talking to people, the more that they want to invest. Life can only be understood in reverse, but only lived forward. And so going to those elder people that can see where your path is going before you can is so important. Now that I'm in my late 40s and I think about those people that grabbed me in my 20s and said, do this, do that, and were helping guide me, I'm like, oh, that's what they saw. But in my 20s, I couldn't see it. And I think it's so important to find that senior leadership.
That's why I do Voice for Valor. It allows me to stay connected to that community. This community saved my life. It changed my life. Every positive thing that has resulted in my life has been based on the military. I never would have met my wife if it wasn't for the military. I never would have lived in these locations if it wasn't for the military, and met these different folks and offered me these different challenges. So through Voice for Valor, I'm always out there photographing promotion ceremonies, retirement ceremonies. I'm in my studio right now that I convert in here to take headshots. I've done so many photos of extremely recognizable people here throughout this country because of Voice for Valor. And like you said, it just keeps me connected to that culture.
I have the I almost wore the hat. I still wear the Voice for Valor hat all the time. I love it.
I got to get you another one since I saw your dog had it on.
Yeah, Stormy, she likes to wear it too. So Voice for Valor, make sure they check that out. Is there anything else you want to talk about Voice for Valor before we wrap up? Any talking points where they can find you?
It's voiceforvalor.com, all one word. And I have the YouTube page and all the social media stuff. But I've had folks reach out to me before and say, hey, I saw that you posted online that, you'll take a veteran's headshot. Yeah, I figured it was just a bunch of talk and nonsense. I was like, no, brother, come on over. So literally 2 days later, a guy that reached out to me on LinkedIn, 2 days later, he's over here getting his headshot, and I'm providing him as much mentoring and networking opportunities that I possibly can, because I tell him, I'm like, look, eventually one of you guys or gals that comes in here and gets your headshot, you're going to become this, this famous rich person that's going to realize that, hey, there was that guy that gave back and wanted to see me succeed. So come on back and, whatever, support the channel, support the production of the show, of the photography sessions. Eventually that pay it forward will happen. Yeah.
I mean, well, with advising vets for as long as I have, it's cool when you 5 years down the road, you get a phone call out of nowhere. 10 years down the road, you're like, oh yeah. And just to see somebody's growth, that just a little bit of giving a crap, right? Caring.
Yep.
And where it goes.
I know in my heart that eventually somebody's going to reach back to me and say, hey, I know you were spending a couple $1,000s a month just out of your own goodwill, taking these pictures, taking time off of work to go, photograph these experiences or these headshots. Here's a check for X amount that goes straight to Voice for Valor. So anybody that provides any funding to me for headshots or any photography things I do, it 100% goes to Voice for Valor, because as well as I do, this production stuff, it's not free, unfortunately.
No. I'm learning. I'm learning as I continue to grow and evolve. Well, no, Mike, this was great. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope the audience that watch, if you get anything out of this, know that you have a community here, that you have people that want to help, that people that want to be a part of your tribe, and you just have to be brave enough to reach out.
Yeah. People reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time. I'm happy to help. I've helped multiple people get to pilot training. I've helped multiple people join the military through the commissioned officer program. I am always here to help, because those 3 flight docs 25, 26 years ago, they did the same thing for me.
Yeah. And again, they were old enough to see what you could be, right? They saw it. They said, I see where this guy could go. Let's get him there. Let's get him on the path.
I owe it all to those flight docs.
Well, I tell you, Mike, I really appreciate you being a guest here, sharing your story, being a part of the tribe, and just thanks for everything you do with Voice for Valor, George Mason, and just all your passions, and just appreciate you.
Yes, Justin, thanks for having me on. And I am so proud to have you as a friend. I see you just crushing it on LinkedIn. So I know there's so many folks out there that have found careers and jobs through you. And I just hope you keep up the momentum.
Let's do it. All right, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.